one of the aspects of GLP-1 is its role in not only improving aspects of glucose absorption, insulin sensitivity, slowing down the gut for better nutrient absorption, all of these things, but it works in the brain through specific pathways. To keep it simple, it's setting off other pathways of influencing dopamine expression and dopamine for gratification for what they've been done.
I'm so blown away with what they do in the brain, and I hope that we could just start there and you could share your knowledge with us on that, because I think that they're one of the most promising things out there for neurocognitive health.
Yeah, so, you've touched on GLP-1s are a very interesting peptide that, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'm going to tell you that I have a book that's coming out here in the next month or two. There are about 20 books out there on GLP-1s. I think this will be the game changer in better understanding the pleiotropic effects, meaning the many different pathways that these GLP-1s work, and in particular, addressing some of the things you're asking me about right now, and how you have found them to be an integral part of your practice, and in where they play a role in many areas of cell efficiency and in improving aspects of metabolism, neurological function, and so forth. So I'm really excited to kind of get that out, and it's been a passion for maybe well over 10 years. I've been teaching about GLP-1s, and the last 2 years I've really focused on finishing this book. So I'm sorry to...
Exciting. I'm excited.
Sorry to take that soundbite away from you.
No, it's good. This is great.
But I think it just kind of, it leads into this question you're having here where, I think this is one of the most exciting areas of many of these aspects of what the GLP-1s, how they provide a role. And I think the basics, let me start at the 30,000 foot view maybe, and then maybe I can kind of go down to the devil in the detail as far as you want. But let's kind of look at at this as a, GLP-1s, they're one of the aspects of GLP-1 is its role in not only improving aspects of glucose absorption, insulin sensitivity, slowing down the gut for better nutrient absorption, all of these things, but it works in the brain through specific pathways to keep it simple, to do some, to take a step in decreasing the, let's say number one, decreasing the patient's appetite. And why does that happen? It happens because we're allowed to provide the brain with a super physiologic at the beginning. Now this can go two ways. You can use this gets into another discussion, but you can use high doses over a period of time, or you can even go with low doses over a long period of time and potentially achieve the same things. But let's just say, these GLP-1s are something that you produce in the gut, in your L cell, that have the ability to communicate with the brain in a way to decrease your ability to want to eat. And so let's back up with that and understand that most of these people that get into issues with weight and metabolic insufficiency, they have a much more difficult time controlling their appetite and don't realize that they're providing their body with an over surplus of nutrients and food. And they may even develop certain addictions, right, to sugar, to chocolate, satiating type of foods that they don't realize that what they've developed a behavior to. And I think that's where this all comes into an interesting place here. We can, if we look at it as when people get into these states of nutrient surplus and their eating habits change and they don't really see it, they don't realize it because it's become a behavior that they can't control. And in fact, it's actually signaled into the brain where these in specific in the hypothalamus and the POMC neurons. It's an area of where this signaling takes place to control basically appetite. And what happens is the behavior is set. And so what does that mean? It means not only as the cell signaling changed based on what we would call an mTOR state, where the cell is constantly activated and promoting this behavior, but it's also it's setting off other pathways of influencing dopamine expression and dopamine for gratification for what they've done, and that has to do with connections in the hypothalamus and so forth, and so they're in this pattern basically. And so what's really interesting is and I started noticing through before GLP-1s became a weekly a once a week thing, we were using GLP-1s that we were dosing like twice a day. Then we got into the ones we were dosing every day. And that's kind of where we were in that phase of like using a lot of liraglutide. And we learned a lot years and years ago on these influences of where we could get people to this. So when you introduce this, this exogenous source of a GLP-1, and let's say we use some higher doses of it initially to influence that pathway in the brain to turn off the appetite. And basically what are we doing? We're changing the state of that cell. We're taking that mTOR state and turning it off and creating an AMPK state. AMPK being catabolism, mTOR being anabolism, and so it's a switch that we're turning off that has allows other cell signaling processes to occur, and that has to do with the melanocortin receptor 4 and its influence on decreasing appetite, and so what happens is the GLP-1 process kind of turns off that appetite seeking behavior. And that allows, in combination with decreasing appetite, it allows also the metabolic aspects of what it does for efficiency, which we may get into or may not here, and what it does for the cell and improving fat oxidation, AMPK in the cell, the things that it does to improve efficiencies to utilize your own fat, improve the flexibility of the cell and the efficiency to start losing weight. Because what is losing weight? Losing weight's a side effect of cell efficiency. Mm-hmm. So that process begins, and you go through that time frame of getting that patient from whatever your desires are, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 pounds, whatever it takes. You can get your patients over time, and I express this very passionately, it has to be over time. It can't be this fast process that so many people don't realize they're creating more problems with. But you take your time with this, many, many, many months, up to a year and a half, whatever it takes, depending on the patient. And once you kind of reach those states, you can start backing down on this GLP-1. And what happens? So what happens is you have patients, and I learned this from my patients. This was incredible, actually, and then I can correlate it with the research. I started seeing a certain subset of patients that were saying, "Hey, Dr. Seeds, I'm going down on my dosing, like you said, because there's so many other benefits, right, that these GLP-1s have with the immune system, with bone, with bone morphology and muscle activation and muscle growth and brain activity and you name it, kidney function. There's so many other things that the GLP-1s play a really significant role in. And so patients, we typically will go down to this using a very small but effective dose that we feel we're making those strides with. And when those patients start backing down, so we got some of our patients that were saying, hey, I had this desire to want to start eating. I thought, oh my gosh, here comes my appetite. How am I going to be able to handle this? And what we were learning were that the patients were teaching themselves new behaviors. They were taking advantage and brilliant in their own accord, on their own accord. They were developing a new behavior, saying, well, gosh, I recognize now that I'm hungry. I recognize that I could go eat this, but I'm going to choose not to. And the more they did that, the more it became a behavior. And I was like, holy Christ, this is amazing. These patients are actually now in control of something that before they had no control of. And in fact, that went a step further, because you had patients that were saying, well, gosh, if I can do this, maybe I can, jump into a new hobby, or maybe I can learn something new and retain it better. And so I started seeing some of these incredible changes where people took on new activities, new learning behaviors, and they were very successful. So then I took that to the next level of where I started working with my patients in training them that they had this capability. And that was the hardest part, was to learn the art of giving your patients that knowledge that, hey, guess what? You have this new capability that if you decide to take advantage of it, it's not easy. It's like anything you do, right? You go out and you lift weights, you want to get stronger, you want to get more performance oriented. It takes time, it takes work. You learn a new language, it takes work. You learn an instrument, it takes work. It's not easy. Well, it's the same thing with learning a new behavior, especially when before that behavior became something automatically you couldn't control. Now it's the art of teaching that patient, hey, guess what? You have control of this, and this is how I suggest you work through it. And it's building that behavior. Oh my gosh. After that, after I learned that over a few years and working with our patients, it was like, it raised these GLP-1s to an incredibly new standard. And for what I felt people needed to know. And interestingly enough, years ago, I was at a research meeting in, it was in Singapore, where a specific lab had been working, the Max Planck lab, actually, out of Germany. They were working on actually nailing down these mechanisms of new learning and capability of changing behaviors. And they correlated the molecular pathways with this GLP-1 in healthy people, like taking healthy young students. And I'm talking to the endocrinologist who's the lead head on this abstract and presenting it. I'm losing my brains. They're listening to this, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm doing this in practice. And so we talked, and it was just an incredible experience. And I think on both sides to see that, hey, clinically people, I mean, I didn't have an influence on them. They were going to write the paper anyways, but it really drove. I think we added to each other's enthusiasm with where this was going to go, and they published their paper, and just being able to share that information just secured, moving forward. Where we have an area here that's untapped and incredible, especially if you take advantage of it, knowing that it's something your patients can harness. And I'm going to tell you something right now. And again, I'll stop because I can talk forever. the patients, it's not going to work with everybody. I
Yep.
mean, it's, you know, behaviors can be recreated very quickly, and it's a tough, it's not an easy thing to do, and especially if you're not conveying it well to your patient and you don't work together on it. But it's I would say it's very significant in how it can occur. It's a game changer, and I hope that answered your question and what you were asking me.
Well, yeah, because I mean, it induces neuroplasticity. And that's so how I came to this was I had hit perimenopause and I was feeling like my brain was not working the way that it used to. I used to have this brilliant ADHD that was like my mad genius skill, you know, it was like a superpower, and it wasn't going so well for a hot minute, and stress had been very high. I pushed back really hard during COVID on a big platform and, you know, dealt with that. Dr. Seeds is a board certified orthopedic surgeon that's been practicing for well over 25 years. He is the founder of the Seeds Scientific Research and Performance Institute.